The Basics of Life. My name is Ken Burkey, and back by very, very popular demand.
You're too kind.
Again, we always say the ratings just skyrocket when, if we had ratings.
I wish we don't.
They would skyrocket. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm great.
Good.
Long time no see.
I know,
Yeah.
really. We need to change that.
Yeah. We're in way too many meetings together, so no, it's all good. Thanks for being here, and we're going to talk about something that we've talked about in some ways before, but it's just a huge passion of yours. Mm-hmm. It's a huge passion of God's, and a huge role the church should play in helping people navigate loss and grief. Mm-hmm. First of all, before we get into how do people, because every human being, you live long enough, you experience loss.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you walk alongside people who have experienced some pretty tremendous loss, heartbreaking loss. So let's jump into it, but talk about Grief Share real quick.
Okay.
Just get context of what you do.
Okay. Well, I help families from the beginning. Grief Share is part of the program, but also we help any family in our community that needs assistance with a memorial service. So I speak to families oftentimes right after they've lost a loved one. So, and then we just try and walk alongside them and help them through, navigate that process and provide a service and reception for them with teams of volunteers. Just love them and help them make those horribly hard decisions that you have to make when you're trying to plan a service after you've lost someone that you love so dearly. So then following that, we offer a program called Grief Share, which is a 13-week program that is a nationwide program, so it's available, all over our country, that is faith-based, and it helps people take very tangible steps each week to navigate through the loss of that loved one.
So at Green Valley, we average about...
We do a service almost every week, sometimes 2 a week,
Yeah,
so
50,
more than 50 a year.
50-something funerals a year. And then the Grief Share is 13 weeks, but it's year-round.
Yes, it's every Tuesday night at 6 p.m., and it's a 13-week, as I said, curriculum, but then it starts over. And everyone that is facilitating Grief Share is walking that road. They're just a little further along than the new people walking in the door. So they've all lost someone very close to them and have gone through Grief Share and found healing there and said, okay, I want to help others that are.
And there's 3 different kinds of classes.
Yes, we have. Grief Share is the big class, and that really is the one we recommend everyone go through first, because it deals with all kinds of areas of grief, no matter whether you've lost a child, a spouse, whether it was to suicide, and then it deals with all the things the anger, the depression, all the things that you feel, the questions that you have. And then offshoots of those as further support is our moms group, Grieving with Hope, which is unfortunately big in our community, and it is run by moms who've lost a child, and the people that come there are obviously moms who've lost a child. So that's something that we do, and then we also have recently started a group for widows, Living Without Him, which is for widows who have lost their husband, which is a different. There's just a lot of loneliness there. Right. There's also some very tangible things they're not used to doing and have to figure out how to navigate. So so that is a different kind of a support group than the one for moms. And
so, again, this is open to the whole community.
Absolutely.
For people to come, and the church is supposed to reflect God, who God is, and God. The psalmist says God is close to the brokenhearted, and He lifts up those whose spirits have been crushed, and there's no deeper hurts than this kind of loss, which we all deal with. Right, absolutely. So you wanted to talk today about, and I think we can have a great discussion. I think this is going to be very helpful for people. Just what kind of going through the grief process, and we wanted to use the poster child of loss in the scriptures, which was Job. Right. Job, who lost everything. He did. He lost family. He lost his vocation. Everything. He lost everything.
And Job, what Job points out to me, first of all, is that death happens to good people and to people that are doing everything right. And Job really shows us that, because he was, in the Bible says, he was blameless. Yeah. He was a man of integrity. He had a wonderful family. He worked hard. He followed God. He really did not sin. I mean, he absolutely did everything right, and yet he lost everything. And I see that so often, is that that death does not escape people because of that. Right. I think sometimes we grow up thinking, well, I'm going to live and into my 80s, and
If
that's
I do everything right.
If I do everything right,
Yeah.
I'm going to do that. And I've seen through the grief share ministry and through our funeral ministry that is so not the case.
Yeah, we call it bad things happen to good
Yes,
people.
they do.
And I think
does.
sometimes people think, well, what did I do wrong?
Right.
Or what did I do to deserve this?
Right.
But you're right, loss, none of us can
No.
get away from it.
No, and we see children that get just terrible diseases that they don't deserve. We see young adults killed in car accidents that shouldn't happen. We see all kinds of things where people are taken from us way too soon, and they didn't necessarily do anything to deserve that. But that is the reality of death, and I think Job really points that out to us.
And that's huge because loss is devastating enough. But if you're living with guilt or shame, like,
Right.
well, I must have deserved this. And so when they hear that, that's a powerful. I think what we're doing today too is not only we're helping people maybe who have gone through loss, but how do we help others go through loss?
Right.
And hearing that, hey, bad things happen to good people is cathartic. It's important for them to know that.
Right, and that it isn't your fault.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing that happens in Job is Job gets bad advice, and you
Yeah.
will get bad advice, and
Yeah.
his friends are telling him you must have done something wrong. And I
Right.
think that happens to people too. What did
Right.
you do wrong that
Yeah.
caused your family member to pass away? And that's a terrible thing to place on someone.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Just that's another thing that happens. That's a normal. I mean, I've experienced loss in my life, and more of my parents got to hear it because I lost some siblings where they just got bad advice, and people mean well.
I know.
But which can cause you to become bitter or isolate, which is no good. But Job's friends.
Yeah, they told him you must have done something wrong.
Yeah.
You must have been a sinner because, or your children must have sinned
Yeah.
to bring this wrath upon you. And that is, when people hear that, sometimes they'll question, well, maybe you should have done something differently in the way you raised your child, or all those kinds of things are just so unfair. You know, that's not true. That doesn't help anyone. Or when someone says, oh, God had a plan.
Right.
Okay, well, maybe I want to come to that conclusion on my own, but I don't want you to tell me that when I've
Right.
just lost someone near to me.
Yeah, there are some key phrases not to say.
Not to say.
And again, sometimes people give bad advice because they're just judgmental or mean-spirited, but most of the time
it's not.
It's because we struggle with what to say, and then we end up saying, they're in a better place. Well, all of those things that may be true don't need to necessarily be said right away.
And we've seen this and experienced it. Really, it's the power of presence. That's what people need to do. I've seen it so many times when we're sitting with a family planning a service, and sometimes we just sit there.
Yeah.
We don't say,
we've
you've been there.
Yeah.
We just sit there. You don't need to say anything, but I don't know if it's just Americans. I mean, that's kind of my...
It might be.
Maybe, but we feel like we have to say something.
Yeah.
We have to offer advice or say, and be a part of making them feel better when really nothing's going to make them feel better. So you just need to be there for them and just withhold that.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about that, I think, yesterday, where Job's friends got it right for a while. They were silent with him,
Right.
and so we call it.
They couldn't
Green
handle
Valley.
it, though.
Yeah, they couldn't. Well, we call it the ministry of silence.
Right.
It's just a hand on the shoulder,
Right.
or just sitting next to him, and they did that for a while, and then they just couldn't
handle it.
stand it.
I know.
And so the story, they just burst out. You
Right.
must have done something
I know,
wrong,
I know.
and so. And I think that's important. I had a mom come up to me. Her son was, after a service, we talked about grief, and her son had been killed in an automobile accident, and it had been 2 years. And she had friends actually telling her, now I know they were friends, meaning well, but they were telling her, you should be over this. You shouldn't be bursting into tears still 2 years later. Bad advice.
Bad advice, very bad advice.
Yeah.
And sometimes people, they're either really, really sad or they become angry. That's another emotion that's very normal to be angry about that. And that's what I love about Grief Share is there's a place for people to be angry. Job was angry.
Right.
And he cried out to God, and that's okay. God can take that. No matter what you say to God, it's all right. He's a big God, and he understands your pain. So I love that we allow that to happen because I think in the American culture too, they don't allow that.
Right.
We try and say, don't be angry, don't cry too much,
Well, that was the third thing you wanted to talk about is, bad things happen to good people. We're going to get bad advice. But the third thing is we have to grieve in community.
Absolutely.
And that's the power of Grief Share.
Absolutely.
So talk about that, because you've seen people walk in angry, but they're given permission to be.
Because they're given permission to be angry, they're given permission to cry, they're given permission to be silent. But they're in a group of people that are there with them that can reach across the aisle or the chair and put their hand on them and say, it's okay. Please come back, continue to come back. So there's that safetyness of being with people and being allowed to experience the emotions that you're feeling and being told that's okay, and take your time. It's fine. We're here. And so many times people go through Grief Share and then they go through it again because the first time through they're in shock and they're just barely getting there to the session at night, and the second time you do begin to heal and you begin to feel like you can share. So yes, we grieving in community is really healthy. And when you isolate, which is the opposite of grieving in community, that's just a terrible. No, it's not.
Bad things happen. We're humans. We just weren't created to. Well, and the Apostle Paul says we're to celebrate together and we're to mourn together.
Right.
We're to rejoice together. And there's nothing more sad that if you have something to celebrate, there's no one to celebrate. But it's just the same when you have to do this together. I think it was C.S. Lewis. Somebody said that a real friendship starts when you realize, oh, you too are going through this. You too there's this. The friendships that happen in Grief Share are huge because there's this deep. Common bond. And
we see that. That's what's so wonderful. And people you're not looking for that at the time, obviously, but the deep bonds that are made there are life lasting. They're going to last forever because of that experience, that life experience that you've shared, that comfort you've been able to receive from someone who really understands how you feel.
Talk about your mom's group.
Oh my goodness. Well, because
that's a bond. There's a friendship and a community. Right.
Well, it started from one of our Grief Share facilitators who'd lost her son, and she just felt that there was just this really a unique loss, a horrific loss that is it's the worst thing you can imagine is losing your child. And so she wanted to start this group of just getting some moms together. And unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, it has grown and grown, and we are reaching into our community, and they're not even moms that we are serving through our funeral ministry, and there's like 20 moms that are coming.
Wow.
And they meet every other Monday night. But the healing, the safe place, the relationships that are being built is amazing, and also what they're now beginning to want to take on as feeling, now they're feeling like they're healing. Everyone is different, how you choose to use this experience and what you choose to do, but it's just a beautiful thing. They meet every other Monday night at Green Valley, and it's all year long. We were trying to do it every once in a while, and again, like Grief Share, we said nope, has to go all the time.
Right. Which brings us to the fourth thing that we talk about with Job, and that is when you grieve in community, and there's this healthy grieving, it allows you to the term move forward, not move on, not get over it.
No.
You never get over it. You never move on. But you move forward, and that is. With this grief and with this pain, God's still not done with you.
No, and before just talking about this moving on thing that we do here in America, we have met families where they have been told, we're not going to talk about that person ever again.
Wow.
You're not allowed to talk about him, so we're moving on. We're not going to have a service. So it's just done. It just ends there, and that is so unhealthy.
Yeah.
And then they come back years later, and we've done a service for a gal who lost her mom, and she was never allowed to have a service, and they weren't allowed to talk about her, and it was like 10 years, 12 years.
I think it was,
And we had a service for her,
and
it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was. And you could see a lot of people who needed to share that they never got to share.
Never got an opportunity. So that I really believe is very important, that you were allowed to go through that. But then, yes, moving forward is, like you said, your heart is never going to completely heal. That person is not going to be in the same form as they were before. You're not going to see them, here on this earth. But God has a plan for your life, and there is so many ways that I've seen people begin to move forward. It's using that life that you loved and maybe the struggle they went through or whatever it is that God spoke to you about when you're healing, that you can help others.
Yeah.
And that is a huge step for people.
It is, and that's where, God uses our experiences, the good and the bad, and that's the moving forward.
Right.
That a lot of these families and people who've lost, now they're involved in helping others. So
Right.
it's honoring the person that they have lost. They're volunteers with the funeral ministry
Right.
or grief share, and maybe it's not always that way.
No,
but
it's not. That's what I think it's important for people to know. It's different for everyone.
Right.
There's a mom who lost her son to suicide, and she has gone back to school to get her degree in psychology because she wants to help other troubled teens.
Wow.
In that area. There's a family who lost their young son tragically in a car accident, and because of the way the accident happened, his organs were able to be saved and to be given to other people, which was so moving to them. They are now devoting their life to being part of the organ donor program.
Wow.
I mean, it's different. There
Right.
are people that get involved in our funeral ministry. There's another family that who lost their son to a really bad drug addiction, and they've been a part of starting and leading a recovery group, a support group for teens that struggle with those same kinds of things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and then there's another mom who's lost her young son to cancer, and she's starting a cancer support group for families because she knows what it is to navigate through that with a young child. I mean, it goes on and on of the specific things people do.
And that's so people when they're in the middle of loss, they're saying, how can they can't see the future.
No.
The good news is that if you grieve in community,
Right.
in this healthy way, we have seen people move forward in beautiful
Right.
ways. Not move on, it's move
No.
forward. And that's, again, Joe being the poster child of that, is we always celebrate that, well, he got a new family and
Right.
a lot of stuff got restored. But there was always still that hole,
Absolutely.
that hurt. And it should be there.
Right.
If you try to cover that up, but that hurt will motivate you to move forward to do great things.
And I think that also makes you who you are in that area that you choose to work in, because I think it makes you very very real. And I think about families, and another family who started, has such a heart for their son, had such a heart for the poor and the broken in Mexico, and so they started an outreach in his name for him. That was very personal to them. But they have such credibility in leading that and making that happen because of the experience, the loss that they have. So they've experienced. So it was,
It's interesting in this whole journey from trying to do funerals and then getting into grief share is you mentioned it earlier, how poorly our American culture teaches people how to grieve. We just don't.
We don't. We don't at all, and it's the only culture I believe in the world that does it that way.
Yeah.
Every other culture allows people months and they cry out loud in public.
Right.
And people cry with them and walk with them through this. I mean, life stops when and they allow for mourning, and we just don't. And I think there's a lot of people that really struggle in their daily lives because they've never been given the permission to grieve. And it's not just grieving. That's what I love about Grief Share is every week there's a specific topic that relates to grief. So there's things you're actually thinking about and working on with others around you who are going through that. So.
Well, can you believe it's been 20 minutes?
Oh no! Gosh darn.
No, this is great. We need to continue to talk
Yeah.
about this because it's where people live. What could you say, somebody sitting out there, what's the best way for them to take a step as far as learning about Grief Share?
Well, depending on if they've lost someone or they have a friend that has lost someone they have not taken the steps to really find healing in a safe place, I would love to encourage them to call Green Valley or go to our website or show up on a Tuesday night at 6 p.m. in our family center, which is right off of our main lobby. It's every Tuesday night. There's no charge. We have a book, but if anyone has any, they go through, but if anyone cannot afford it, we'll give them a book. It's not a problem, and that it's a safe place. And the same with if they've lost a spouse, if it's a widow that's lost her husband and she needs some help, that is every Sunday at 1 p.m. in our parent center, again, our family center, they can come to that. And then our moms group every other Monday. So I mean, we have a lot. So please don't stay. I just don't want people to stay out there,
Yeah.
Alone.
Good. Thanks for your passion.
Okay.
I love it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, if just show up, and if you have, you can go to the website, or if you have any more questions, call Green Valley. You can talk to Ginger. You can tell she's passionate about this,
No, I
and
just know
and
it
she
will help.
just, if you have any questions, just please call. So thank you, Ginger.
You're welcome. Thanks for having
And
me.
thanks for being with us here on the Basics of Life.